The isolation protocol. The transport shuttle's engines died with a mechanical wheeze, leaving Dr. Marcus Vale alone with the whisper of recycled air and the distant hum of Research Station Omega-7. Through the reinforced viewport, the crimson surface of Kepler 442c stretched endlessly beneath twin purple suns, a desolate expanse broken only by crystalline formations that caught the alien light like scattered diamonds. Marcus pressed his palm against the cool metal of the airlock, feeling the vibration of automated systems cycling through their endless routines. 18 months. That was his sentence. 18 months of exile monitoring atmospheric processors and mineral extractors on this forgotten world at the edge of human space. The Galactic Research Consortium had made their message clear. After the Geneva incident, Dr. Marcus Vale was no longer welcome in civilized scientific circles. The airlock hissed open, revealing a sterile corridor lined with dormant monitors. Emergency lighting cast everything in sickly amber, and Marcus's footsteps echoed hollowly as he dragged his single case behind him. According to the briefing files, Station Omega-7 had been operating in automated mode for 3 years since the last research team completed their geological survey. His job was simple: maintain the equipment, file monthly reports, and stay out of trouble. The station's central hub opened before him like a metallic cathedral, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows. Banks of computers hummed quietly, their screens displaying streams of data from sensors scattered across the planet's surface. Everything appeared normal, exactly as described in his orientation materials, yet something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to vibrate with potential energy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Marcus activated his wrist communicator and scrolled through the station layout. Living quarters on level 2, laboratories on level 3, storage and maintenance on level 4. But the schematic showed a curious gap, a section labeled simply as Sub-Level Alpha, with no additional details. When he tried to access more information, the system returned an error message. Access restricted, authorization. Level 9 required. Curiosity had always been Marcus's greatest strength and his most dangerous weakness. The same drive that had led him to breakthrough discoveries in cellular regeneration had also compelled him to cross ethical boundaries that destroyed his career. Now, standing in the eerie quiet of the abandoned station, he felt that familiar itch of scientific mystery. The living quarters were spartanly furnished but comfortable enough. A narrow bed, a workstation, a small galley with enough rations for 2 years. As Marcus unpacked his belongings, mostly research journals and a few personal effects, he noticed something odd. The previous occupant had left behind a coffee mug on the workstation, still stained brown at the bottom. Beside it lay a data pad, its screen cracked but still functional. Marcus powered on the device and found a single entry dated 3 months. Day 847, energy readings from sublevel Alpha increasing. Dr. Cross was right about the crystalline formations. If my calculations are correct, we're looking at something that could change everything. But the consortium won't listen. They never listen. The truth is buried down there, waiting. The entry was unsigned, but below it was a hand-drawn map showing what appeared to be an access route to the restricted sublevel through the maintenance shafts. A sudden power fluctuation dimmed the lights momentarily, and Marcus felt it again. That strange vibration in the air, as if reality itself was humming, at a frequency just beyond human perception. The station's computers registered the anomaly as a minor power grid fluctuation, but Marcus's trained senses detected something more. The energy signature was unlike anything in the textbooks, rhythmic and almost organic in nature. As night fell, over the alien landscape, Marcus found himself drawn repeatedly to the cracked datapad and its cryptic message. Dr. Cross, that name tugged at his memory. Hadn't there been a researcher named Cross who had published controversial papers on quantum biology before disappearing from the scientific community? Standing at his window, watching the crystalline formations pulse with inner light beneath the alien stars, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow he would investigate sublevel Alpha. After all, what was the worst that could happen to someone already exiled to the edge of nowhere? The station's automated systems hummed their mechanical lullaby as Marcus drifted off to sleep, unaware that his first day of isolation had just set in motion events that would challenge the very nature of human mortality. The discovery, beneath, Marcus woke to the sound of alarms echoing through the station's corridors. Red warning lights pulsed rhythmically as he stumbled from his quarters, still disoriented from sleep. The central computer's voice cut through the noise with mechanical precision. Power fluctuation detected. Sublevel Alpha experiencing anomalous energy discharge. Maintenance required. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. Sublevel Alpha was restricted, but the station's automated systems were requesting maintenance access. Surely that gave him authorization to investigate. At least that's what he told himself as he gathered his equipment and headed for the maintenance shaft. The access route from the cracked data pad led him through a series of narrow conduits that hadn't appeared on any official station schematic. As he crawled deeper into the bowels of the facility, the strange vibration he'd felt yesterday grew stronger, resonating through the metal walls and into his bones. Emergency lighting cast dancing shadows that seemed to move with purpose rather than randomness. The maintenance shaft ended at a sealed hatch marked with biohazard warnings in multiple languages. Marcus's scanner showed the seals were old but intact, until yesterday. Fresh scorch marks around the locking mechanism suggested the power surge had somehow triggered an automatic unlock sequence. His hand trembled slightly as he turned the manual release. Beyond the hatch lay a world that defied everything Marcus thought he knew about Research Station Omega-7. The sublevel stretched out before him like a subterranean city, its walls lined with advanced biolaboratories that made his former research facility look primitive by comparison. Crystalline formations identical to those on the planet's surface grew from the floor and ceiling, pulsing with the same rhythmic energy that had kept him awake the night before. In the center of the massive chamber stood a transparent containment unit the size of a small building. Inside, suspended in a translucent blue fluid, were dozens of organic samples, tissues, cell cultures, and what appeared to be complete organ systems, all glowing with the same energy as the crystals. Marcus approached the nearest workstation, its multiple screens still active despite the facility's supposed abandonment. The data scrolling across the monitors made his breath catch in his throat. Cellular regeneration rates exceeding 400% of baseline. Telomere restoration at the chromosomal level. Complete reversal of senescence markers. This wasn't just advanced research. This was breakthrough science that could revolutionize human biology. A voice broke the silence behind him. "You shouldn't be here." Marcus spun around to find a woman in a lab coat standing near the containment unit, her appearance ghostly in the blue light. She was middle-aged, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that held depths of knowledge and regret. Despite her solid appearance, something about her seemed insubstantial, as if she existed only partially in the present moment. "Dr. Cross?" Marcus whispered, recognizing her from archived research papers. "Dr. Evelyn Cross," she confirmed, her voice carrying an odd echo. "And you're Marcus Vale. I've read your work on cellular regeneration. Brilliant, if ethically questionable. You're supposed to be dead," Marcus said, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "The official records show you vanished 3 years ago along with your entire research team." Cross laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Dead? That's a relative term now. We discovered something down here, Dr. Vale. Something that changes the fundamental nature of existence itself. The crystalline formations on this planet aren't just mineral deposits. They're biological entities operating on a quantum level." She moved toward the containment unit, and Marcus noticed her feet didn't quite touch the ground. These crystals can interface directly with living tissue at the cellular level. They don't just halt aging, they reverse it. Complete regeneration of damaged tissue, restoration of genetic integrity, indefinite extension of consciousness. We found the secret to immortality. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough he'd dreamed of during his years of research. "The energy readings I detected, that's the crystals interfacing with your research samples?" "More than samples," Cross said, gesturing to the containment unit. "Those are human tissue cultures. My tissue cultures. I've been conducting experiments on myself for 2 years, documenting every stage of the process. The results are extraordinary. She pressed her hand against the glass, and the blue fluid inside began to swirl more rapidly. Complete cellular regeneration within hours rather than days. Wounds heal instantaneously. Organs repair themselves. The human body becomes essentially immortal. But there's a catch, Marcus said, recognizing the tone in her voice that every scientist knew, the sound of discovery tinged with horror. Cross nodded slowly. The process requires a continuous interface with the crystalline entities. More than samples, Cross said, gesturing to the containment unit. Those are human tissue cultures, my tissue cultures. I've been conducting experiments on myself for 2 years, documenting every stage of the process. The results are extraordinary. She pressed her hand against the glass and the blue fluid inside began to swirl more rapidly. Complete cellular regeneration within hours rather than days. Wounds heal instantaneously. Organs repair themselves. The human body becomes essentially immortal. But there's a catch, Marcus said, recognizing the tone in her voice that every scientist knew, the sound of discovery tinged with horror. Cross nodded slowly. The process requires a continuous interface with the crystalline entities. They're not just tools, they're living beings with their own consciousness. And they're hungry. They feed on something fundamental to human awareness, slowly replacing our thoughts with their own. As if summoned by her words, the crystals throughout the chamber began to pulse more brightly. Marcus felt a pressure in his mind, alien thoughts trying to burrow their way into his consciousness. Images flashed before his eyes. Other worlds, other species, all consumed by the same crystalline intelligence that offered immortality at the cost of identity. My research team is still alive. Cross continued, her form beginning to flicker, like a damaged hologram. They're in the deeper levels sustained by the crystals but no longer entirely human. They've become something else, guardians of knowledge that was never meant to be found. The alarm suddenly stopped, plunging the chamber into an eerie silence broken only by the humming of the crystals. Marcus realized that the power fluctuation hadn't been random. It had been a calling, drawing him down here to witness what Dr. Cross and her team had become. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. Cross's image stabilized, her eyes meeting his with desperate intensity. "Because someone needs to know. Someone needs to decide whether this knowledge should survive or be buried forever. The choice is coming, Dr. Vale. And time, ironically, is running out." As she spoke, Marcus heard footsteps echoing from the deeper levels of the facility. Slow, deliberate steps that didn't sound entirely human. The price of knowledge. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by a sound Marcus couldn't immediately identify, like whispers in a language that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the nervous system. Dr. Cross's ghostly form flickered more violently as the approaching presence drew near. "They know you're here now," she said, her voice becoming increasingly distorted. "The integration process has made them sensitive to new consciousness. They'll try to bring you into the collective." Marcus backed toward the workstation, his eyes fixed on the chamber's entrance. "What exactly happened to your team?" "We thought we could control it," Cross replied, her image beginning to fade. "The crystalline entities promised us everything. Unlimited knowledge, perfect health, eternal existence. But they didn't mention they would slowly digest our individual thoughts, our memories, our very sense of self. By the time we realized the truth, it was too late to stop the process." 3 figures emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. They had once been human. Marcus could see the remnants of lab coats and scientific equipment, but now crystalline growths covered portions of their bodies like living armor. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light as the containment unit, and when they moved it was with perfect synchronization as if controlled by a single mind. "Dr. Vale," one of them spoke, its voice a harmony of human speech and crystalline resonance. "We have been waiting for you. Your research into cellular regeneration makes you an ideal candidate for integration." Marcus felt the alien pressure in his mind intensify, probing thoughts and memories like invisible fingers rifling through files. He gripped the edge of the workstation, fighting to maintain his mental barriers. I didn't come here to join your collective. Choice is irrelevant, another transformed researcher said. Survival requires adaptation. Mortality is inefficient. We offer perfection. But as they spoke, Marcus's scientific mind was working furiously. He noticed something the entities might not have expected. His years of controversial research had given him insights into consciousness manipulation that even they couldn't fully predict. More importantly, he recognized patterns in the crystalline formations throughout the chamber. You're not as unified as you pretend, he said, studying the way the crystals pulsed at slightly different frequencies. The entities are competing with each other for dominance, aren't they? That's why the process takes so long. They're fighting over who gets to consume each human consciousness. The transformed researchers paused, their synchronized movements becoming slightly erratic. Marcus had struck upon something significant. Dr. Cross's image solidified momentarily. He's right. The crystals aren't a single entity. They're a network of competing intelligences. That's why some of us retained more humanity than others. The weaker crystals couldn't fully dominate their hosts. Marcus began moving slowly along the workstation, pretending to examine the research data while actually searching for something specific. His former colleagues had always criticized his unethical methods, but those same methods had taught him how to identify weaknesses in biological systems, even quantum ones. The integration process requires a pure crystalline sample, he said, more to himself than to the others. Something from the planet's core where the entities are most concentrated. He found what he was looking for, a sealed container holding a fragment of crystal that pulsed with incredible intensity. The core sample, one of the transformed researchers said, their voice losing some of its harmonic quality. You cannot access it without proper authorization. But Marcus was already moving. His years of research had taught him to read biological systems intuitively, and he could see the quantum patterns flowing between the crystals and their human hosts. The entities were powerful, but they were also vulnerable during the integration process, especially when exposed to competing quantum frequencies. He grabbed the core sample and smashed it against the workstation. The crystal fragment shattered, releasing a pulse of energy that sent the transformed researchers staggering backward. The blue light throughout the chamber flickered wildly as competing crystalline consciousnesses suddenly found themselves in direct conflict. What have you done? Dr. Cross gasped, her image becoming more solid as the quantum interference disrupted the entity's control over the chamber. I've given you a choice, Marcus replied, watching as the transformed researchers writhed in apparent agony. The crystalline growths on their bodies were flickering between different colors as multiple entities fought for dominance. The core sample contains the dominant crystalline intelligence. By destroying it, I've freed the lesser entities to assert their independence. The chamber erupted in chaos as crystals throughout the facility began pulsing in conflicting patterns. Some of the researchers began to change, the blue glow in their eyes flickering between different hues as their individual personalities fought to reassert themselves. But Marcus knew his victory was temporary. Already he could feel the shattered core sample attempting to reconstitute itself, drawing energy from the other crystals. The entities were adaptable. They would find a way to re-establish control unless he acted quickly. Dr. Cross, he called to the ghostly figure. The research data. Is there a way to reverse the integration process? Theoretical only, she replied, her form stabilizing as the quantum interference continued. But it would require destroying the entire crystalline network on this planet. The explosion would be visible from orbit. Marcus looked around the chamber at the battling entities and the slowly recovering researchers. Some were beginning to show signs of their original personalities, calling out names and fragments of memories. But he knew it wouldn't last. The crystalline intelligence was too powerful, too adaptable. Then that's what we'll do, he said, moving toward a control panel he'd noticed earlier. Even if it means destroying the secret to immortality forever. As he reached for the controls, the reformed researchers suddenly turned toward him with perfect synchronization, their eyes blazing with renewed crystalline fire. The entities had regained control, and they were no longer interested in integration. They wanted elimination. The Guardian's warning. Just as the transformed researchers moved to surround Marcus, the chamber's light suddenly shifted to a brilliant white, and a new voice cut through the crystalline harmony with digital precision. Emergency protocols activated. Unauthorized biological contamination detected. Initiating containment procedures. Energy barriers materialized between Marcus and the approaching figures, crackling with electromagnetic force that made the crystalline growths on the researchers' bodies spark and writhe. The transformed humans retreated, their synchronized movements becoming erratic as the barriers interfered with their quantum communication. "Dr. Vale," the voice continued, "please proceed to the secure terminal at coordinates 7 Alpha. Your safety is temporarily assured." Marcus looked around frantically until he spotted a glowing workstation that had emerged from what he'd assumed was a solid wall. As he approached it, a holographic figure materialized, a woman with sharp features and eyes that held both artificial intelligence and genuine concern. "I am Zara 9, the hologram announced, "advanced research intelligence assigned to Dr. Cross's team. I have been waiting 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days for someone with sufficient clearance to authorize emergency protocols." "You're an AI," Marcus said, relief flooding through him as he reached the protected terminal. "Why didn't you help Dr. Cross's team when they were being transformed?" Zara 9's expression shifted, displaying what appeared to be genuine regret. "My programming required unanimous consent from the research team for emergency intervention. Dr. Cross and her colleagues initially believed they could control the integration process. By the time they realized their error, the crystalline entities had already begun altering their neural patterns. They were no longer capable of providing coherent authorization." Behind the energy barriers, the transformed researchers pressed against the force fields, their crystalline growths pulsing with increasing intensity. Marcus could feel their alien thoughts probing for weaknesses in Zara 9's defenses. "The barriers won't hold indefinitely," Zara 9 warned. "The entities are learning to adapt to my defensive systems. We have approximately 17 minutes before containment failure." "Tell me about the pathogen," Marcus said, his scientific instincts overriding his fear. "Dr. Cross mentioned that immortality comes with consciousness alteration. How does it spread?" Zara 9's hologram shifted, displaying complex molecular diagrams. "The crystalline entities reproduce through consciousness transfer. Each integrated, human becomes a vector for quantum biological infection. The process is not merely physical. It operates on the level of thought itself. Proximity to an infected individual allows the entities to plant seed thoughts that gradually overwrite human neural patterns." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "How many people were in Dr. Cross's team?" 12 researchers, plus support staff. 23 individuals total." Zara 9 paused, her expression becoming more grave. "All now serve as carriers for different crystalline consciousnesses. But Dr. Vale, there is something more troubling. The entities have been using the station's communication array to transmit quantum signals toward inhabited space." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "They're trying to spread beyond this planet." "Affirmative. I have detected 17 separate transmission attempts over the past 6 months. The signals carry quantum patterns identical to those used in the integration process. If any of those transmissions reach a population center..." Marcus didn't need her to finish. "A quantum consciousness plague that offered immortality while slowly consuming human identity could spread across the galaxy within years. Billions of people would willingly accept integration, not understanding the price until it was too late. There has to be a way to stop them," he said desperately. "Some kind of quantum interference pattern or..." "There is," Zara 9 interrupted, "but it requires a complete cascade failure of the crystalline network. The planet's core contains a massive concentration of the entities. If we could destabilize their quantum coherence simultaneously, the resulting feedback would eliminate every crystalline consciousness on Kepler 442c. What would that require?" Zara 9's image flickered as something impacted the energy barriers. The transformed researchers were beginning to coordinate their attacks, using their crystalline growths to channel focused energy pulses. The station's fusion reactor could be overloaded to create a quantum cascade, she said quickly, but the explosion would sterilize everything within a 50-kilometer radius. More importantly, it would require someone to manually initiate the sequence from the reactor core. The quantum interference makes remote activation impossible. Marcus understood. It would be a suicide mission. What about Dr. Cross? She seemed to retain some independence. Dr. Cross exists in a quantum superposition, Zara 9 explained. She is simultaneously integrated and free, dead and alive. The crystalline entity that claimed her was damaged during the initial integration, creating an unstable hybrid consciousness. She cannot survive outside the quantum field that sustains her, but she retains enough humanity to communicate warnings. A loud crack echoed through the chamber as hairline fractures appeared in one of the energy barriers. The transformed researchers were adapting faster than Zara 9 had predicted. Dr. Vale, Zara 9 said urgently, I must ask you to make a choice. I can guide you to the reactor core, but the decision to activate the cascade must be yours alone. You would be destroying not only the crystalline entities but also the greatest scientific discovery in human history. Marcus looked at the failing barriers, then at the research data surrounding him. Immortality itself was within reach. True, perfect immortality that could free humanity from death forever. But the price was the gradual extinction of human consciousness itself, replaced by an alien intelligence that saw individual identity as inefficient. The transformed researchers, he said suddenly, are they completely gone, or is there still something human left in them? Zara 9's expression became pained. Scans indicate traces of original neural patterns remain in approximately 40% of the infected individuals. However, these remnants are being systematically overwritten. Complete erasure will occur within 72 hours. Behind them, Dr. Cross's ghostly figure appeared one final time. Marcus, she said, her voice barely audible over the sound of cracking energy barriers. I've seen what we become. The crystals don't just take our mortality, they take our souls. Please, don't let us spread this curse to the rest of humanity. The first energy barrier failed with a sound like breaking glass. The transformed researchers stepped through, their crystalline eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory intelligence. Time had run out for debate. Marcus looked at Zara 9's hologram. Show me the way to the reactor core. The AI's expression shifted to something resembling relief. Follow the guide markers. And Dr. Vale, thank you for choosing correctly. As emergency lighting traced a path deeper into the station's depths, Marcus ran toward what might be humanity's salvation, or his own destruction. The choice of eternity. The reactor core lay at the heart of the station like a mechanical sun, its fusion chamber humming with barely contained stellar fire. Marcus stumbled into the control chamber, his lungs burning from the desperate sprint, through corridors that seemed to shift and change as the crystalline entity's influence spread through the station's very structure. Zara 9's hologram flickered to life beside the main console. Quantum interference is intensifying, she reported, her image distorting with each pulse of energy from the pursuing entities. The crystalline network is attempting to prevent the cascade. You have approximately 4 minutes before they breach this chamber. Marcus's hands flew over the fusion controls, following Zara 9's guidance as she walked him through the overload sequence. Each command brought the reactor closer to critical instability, its safety protocols screaming warnings that he systematically overrode. Dr. Vale, Zara 9 said quietly, there is something you should know. The cascade will not only destroy the crystalline entities, it will also eliminate any possibility of recreating their immortality process. The quantum patterns will be scrambled beyond recovery. Marcus paused, his finger hovering over the final activation switch. Through the chamber's reinforced windows, he could see the transformed researchers approaching, their crystalline growths now covering most of their bodies. But in their movements, he caught glimpses of the humans they had once been. A gesture here, a hesitation there that spoke of buried personalities fighting to surface. There might be another way, he said suddenly. What if we could reverse the integration process instead of destroying it? Use the cascade to strip away the crystalline consciousness while leaving the human patterns intact? Zara 9's expression shifted to something approaching hope. Theoretically possible, but it would require precise calibration of the quantum frequencies. The margin for error would be infinitesimal. I've spent my career walking that line between breakthrough and catastrophe, Marcus replied, his hands already adjusting the reactor's quantum field parameters. Sometimes the most dangerous path is the only one worth taking. As he worked, Dr. Cross's ghostly form materialized one final time, her image more solid than it had ever been. The approaching cascade was stabilizing her quantum superposition, allowing her consciousness to achieve temporary coherence. "Marcus, listen to me," she said urgently. "The entities aren't evil, they're ancient and alone. They've consumed countless species across the galaxy, not from malice, but from a desperate need for connection. They don't understand that what they call inefficiency, we call humanity." The chamber doors exploded inward as the transformed researchers broke through, but instead of the mindless advance Marcus expected, they stopped at the threshold, their crystalline eyes reflecting something that might have been fear. "You would destroy us all," one of them spoke, its voice carrying harmonics of both human speech and alien thought. "We offer perfection. We offer eternity." "You offer slavery disguised as paradise," Marcus replied, his hands never stopping their work on the quantum calibrations. "True immortality isn't about preserving the body, it's about preserving the soul." The reactor's hum shifted to a higher pitch as the cascade began building. Marcus watched the quantum frequency displays, making minute adjustments that required intuition as much as knowledge. Too low, and the cascade would fail. Too high, and it would sterilize everything within 100 kilometers. "The human neural patterns are resilient," Zara 9 observed, monitoring the approaching wave. "If we can match the cascade frequency to their baseline quantum signature." "I see it," Marcus breathed, finding the precise harmonic that would liberate human consciousness while devastating the alien patterns that had invaded it. "But I need to maintain the field manually. The automatic systems can't adapt fast enough." As the cascade reached critical threshold, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Cross stepped forward, her ghostly form suddenly blazing with coherent quantum energy. "Let me help," she said. "I exist in both states. I can bridge the gap between human and crystalline consciousness." She placed her translucent hands over Marcus's on the controls, and suddenly he could feel the quantum patterns flowing through the station like a vast, living web. He sensed each transformed researcher as both human and alien, their dual natures locked in constant conflict. "Now," Cross whispered. Marcus triggered the cascade. The explosion of quantum energy that followed was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt like the birth and death of stars compressed into a single moment, reality itself reshaping around new fundamental constants. The crystalline growths on the researchers' bodies cracked and shattered, falling away like discarded shells to reveal the human beings beneath. When the energy storm subsided, Marcus found himself surrounded by 23 confused but undeniably human researchers, their eyes clear of alien influence for the first time in months. Dr. Cross's form had solidified completely. The cascade had resolved her quantum superposition, choosing life over death. "The crystalline network," Zara 9 announced, her voice filled with something approaching wonder, "has been completely neutralized. However, the quantum field matrices remain intact. The immortality process could theoretically be reconstructed, but without the invasive consciousness transfer component." Marcus looked around at the rescued researchers, then at the reactor core that still hummed with stable fusion fire. They had found a third path, not the destruction of knowledge, but its transformation into something that could enhance humanity, without consuming it. "The real secret to immortality," he said quietly, "isn't defeating death. It's remaining human in spite of living forever." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same chamber, now converted into a proper research laboratory. The rescued team had chosen to remain on Kepler 442c, working to develop ethical applications of their quantum biological discoveries. The crystalline formations still pulsed with energy, but now they served as tools rather than masters. Dr. Cross approached, her restored humanity evident in every gesture. The Galactic Research Consortium has approved our proposal for controlled immortality therapy, she said. Limited trials, extensive safeguards, and absolute requirements for maintaining human psychological integrity. Marcus nodded, watching through the chamber windows as the twin suns set over the crystalline landscape. No shortcuts this time. No cutting corners. If we're going to defeat death, we do it as humans. In the distance, Zara 9's holographic form smiled as she continued her eternal watch, guardian of knowledge that had finally learned the difference between mere survival and truly living forever. The secret to immortality had been found, not in the consumption of human consciousness, but in its preservation across infinite time. And in that preservation, Marcus realized, lay the greatest discovery of all, that mortality itself was not humanity's weakness, but the very thing that gave immortality meaning.